There's a kind of quiet music that only Wyoming knows.
Not silence, never silence. The wind still moves through the tall grass. The music horses still shift in the corral. Somewhere far off, a meadowlark, music, calls once and doesn't call again. But beneath all of it, beneath the creak of the fence post and the distant roll of thunder building, slow over the mountains, there's a stillness. A peace so deep it settles in the chest like warm bread after a long day's ride. Caleb Morrow had lived on that land for 25 years and never once questioned it. He fixed fences because fences needed fixing. Greater than. Music. Greater than he rose before the sun because the cattle didn't wait. He ate alone at a table built for 4 because the house had been quiet since his father passed. Quiet in ways that wind and open sky couldn't fill. He wasn't a lonely man. He told himself that often enough that he almost believed it. And then, on the 3rd Tuesday of June in the year 1883, a woman drove a wagon down his road, got one wheel stuck clean in the mud, stepped down without a word of complaint, and started pulling fence boards out of the back like she'd been doing it all her life. Her name was Nora Quinlan. Greater than music. Greater than she was 40 years old, composed as still water and entirely unimpressed by him. Caleb Morrow didn't stand a chance. She didn't ask for help. That was the first thing Caleb noticed. Not her copper hair threaded with silver catching the afternoon sun. Not the calm set of her jaw. Not the way her blue dress was already dusted at the hem from the muddy road. What he noticed first was that she didn't call out, didn't wave her arms, didn't do any of the things people when they want someone to come running. She just worked. Music. He'd been replacing a post on the north fence line when the wagon appeared. At the bend in music, the road. He watched it slow, watched the right front wheel sink into the rut left by last week's rain, watched the whole rig tilt sideways with a groan of wood and iron. He set down his hammer and waited. She climbed down from the seat with the careful movements of someone who had learned long ago not to trust unstable ground. Music. Walked around to the back, pulled the canvas aside, and started unloading fence boards one at a time, setting them in a neat stack on the dry grass beside the road. Caleb walked over. Greater than. Music. Greater than ma'am. She looked up without startling. Eyes the color of creek water in shadow, green, steady, giving nothing away. She took in his age in a single glance, and something in her expression closed, just slightly, like a door eased shut rather than slammed. Morning, she said, though it was well past noon. Afternoon, he said. She looked at the sun, music, calculated quietly, and gave a small nod. Afternoon, then. He crouched beside the wheel and pressed his hand into the mud around the axle. Deep, but not hopeless. He got his shoulder behind the wagon frame. Greater than. Music. Greater than. She took the reins without being told. Climbed back up, clicked her tongue at the horse. Greater than music. Greater than, and waited. It took 2 tries. On the second, music. The wheel broke free with a sucking pull, and the wagon rolled forward onto solid ground. She looked back at him, mud on his sleeve, breath, music steady. Thank you, she said. Where are you headed? Ridgecrest. Music. I'm the new school teacher, he nodded once. Road forks a mile ahead. Take the left. She studied him a moment longer than was strictly polite. Then she climbed down and began loading the fence boards back into the wagon. He picked up the other end without asking. Before we ride any further with Caleb and Nora, if this story is settling in nice and easy, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and leave us a like. Music. It costs you nothing and it means everything to this channel. Now let's see if that school teacher makes it to Ridgecrest without looking back. She did look back once. Just before the road bent around the stand of cottonwoods and the wagon, would have disappeared from view entirely. She turned her head, not her whole body, just her head, and Caleb was still standing there at the fence line, hammer back in hand, already working. He didn't wave. Neither did she. Nora faced forward and kept the horse moving. She told herself it meant nothing. A young man being decent on a country road, that was all. Wyoming was full of decent young men, boys really, most of them. She had coats older than 25. She almost smiled at that almost. Ridgecrest was smaller than the agency letter had suggested. One main street, a general store, a church that doubled as a meeting hall, and music, a schoolhouse at the east, end of town that needed paint badly and a new door latch worse. Her landlady, a widow named Mrs. Holt, Music took one look at her traveling bag and said, "You've moved before." "Several times," Nora said. "You running towards something or away?" "Neither. I go where the work is." Mrs. Holt left Music, a pitcher of water and a square of cornbread on the dresser, and closed the door softly behind her. Nora sat on the edge of the bed. Outside the window, the Wyoming evening was settling in, purple music and gold over the mountains, the first stars already faint above the ridgeline. A dog barked somewhere down the street. A screen door banged. Somewhere someone was cooking something with onions. Ordinary sounds. The sounds of a town going about its life without her. She had arrived in 11 towns this way. Always the stranger. Always the school teacher. Music. Always the woman who was competent and reliable and who no one thought to invite to supper because surely she had her own arrangements. She ate the cornbread alone. It was good cornbread. Music. She didn't let herself think about the man at the fence. She only half succeeded. He came to town 4 days later with a paper sack of nails he genuinely needed and a route through the main street that was genuinely out of his way. He was coming out of the hardware store when he nearly walked into her, outside the general store, standing on the boardwalk with a list in one hand and a look of mild annoyance directed at a barrel of flour that was not the weight she'd been promised. "That's 40 pounds, not 50, she was telling the store clerk, a boy of 17 who was clearly not accustomed to being corrected in that particular tone of voice. "Yes, ma'am," the boy said and went back inside. She turned and found Caleb 2 feet away. Surprise first, then composure settling over her features like a curtain drawn evenly across a window. I know your name," she said. "Morrow. Caleb Morrow. Miss Quinlan," she paused. "Though you likely heard greater than music, greater than word travels." A faint smile, brief as a cloud shadow crossing open grass. "Hardware, music store? Nails, the fence?" He blinked. He hadn't expected her to remember. "Same one," he said. "Is it giving you trouble?" "Posts rot. It's just the nature of things." She seemed to consider that. "I suppose it is." The flower boy returned with a corrected ticket. Nora checked it, signed greater than music, greater than, turned back to Caleb as if she'd been aware of him the entire time, which he suspected she had. "Good afternoon, Mr. Morrow. Miss Quinlan." She walked away at an even, unhurried pace. He stood on the boardwalk a moment longer than necessary. He needed more nails next week, too. Music, he decided. October came in cold and golden and found Caleb Morrow standing in his barn at dusk talking to his horse. This was not new. He'd been talking to horses since before he could properly talk to people. But the subject had shifted. She looked out the window again, he told the Mare, who was eating and thus willing to listen. Friday, 8:30, same as last week. The Mare did not comment. "I know how it looks," he said. "I know what the town thinks. Holt woman's already got opinions." He leaned against the stall post, arms crossed, looking at nothing in particular. Doesn't change what I see when I'm around her. Greater than. Music. Greater than doesn't change that she's the most honest person I've met in this county. Doesn't change that she laughed last Tuesday, music, and I've been thinking about it since. The Mari shifted. She's 40 years old, Caleb said quietly, as if testing the words music for weight. And I'm 25, and I know that. I'm not a fool. He was quiet for a moment. But I've run this ranch since I was 19. I've made decisions most men twice my age haven't had to make. I buried my father without falling apart, and I kept the cattle through 2 bad winters. And I've never asked a single person for something I couldn't justify. He pushed off the post and picked up the feed bucket. So I'm asking myself one question. Not what the town thinks, not what she thinks right now, because right now she's still deciding. He set the bucket down. The question is whether she's worth waiting for. He looked at the mare. She is, he said. Music. That's the whole of it. He went.